What if the Straw Hat Pirates are not just the future Pirate King's crew, but the most dangerous religious rebellion the world of One Piece has ever seen? Because when you really stop looking at them as funny pirates and start looking at the titles the world has given them, not the names they chose for themselves, but the names forced upon them by fear, you begin to see something that feels less like coincidence and more like a mythological pattern unfolding in real time. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. King of Hell, Demon Child, Diable Jambe, Soul King, Sun God, God Usopp. That is not branding, that is a pantheon forming. Quick explanation. A pantheon is a group or family of gods within a mythology or belief system. Instead of one single god, many ancient cultures believed in multiple gods, who each represent different forces of the world. So the world government calls devil fruits devil powers, the celestial dragons call themselves gods, Marie Joie literally sits above the clouds like heaven ruling over the earth below, and every time someone rises who cannot be controlled, they are labeled something infernal, something demonic, something unnatural. Because history shows us that tyrannies don't just eliminate enemies, they redefine it as evil so that the masses never question the system itself. Robin wasn't called Demon Child because she was cruel. She was called Demon Child because she knew too much, and knowledge in a controlled world is dangerous. Zoro wasn't crowned King of Hell because he worships darkness. He earned that title by walking willingly into death again and again and coming back stronger, carrying the weight of blades that demand blood, accepting the pain others would never survive, embodying the archetype of the warrior who stands at the gates of the underworld and refuses to kneel. Sanji's Diable Jambe is literally fire born from passion and suffering, a flame that should destroy him, but instead fuels him. And fire in mythology is never just destruction, it is transformation, it is rebellion. It's like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. The moment power is taken away from those who thought they owned it. Brook is Soul King, a musician who controls the cold air of death itself, who walks between life and afterlife with a smile. And in almost every myth system, the figure who commands souls is not evil, but sacred, feared yet necessary, the reminder that mortality cannot be erased even by those who sit on thrones above the clouds. And then there is Usopp, the meme, the joke, God Usopp. But here is where everything flips. In mythology, the most underestimated figure is often the trickster, the storyteller whose lies slowly shape reality. And Usopp fits that role perfectly. His lies don't come true instantly, but over time they start turning into reality, almost like prophecies hidden inside his stories. He says he commands 8,000 men, and later, he stands before armies who believe in him. He claims bravery long before he embodies it. He tells stories about giants respecting him, and later, the giants actually kneel before him. Creation through narrative is divine symbolism. In ancient traditions, gods speak the world into existence, and in One Piece, Usopp speaks possibility into existence, turning fear into legend, legend into belief, belief into reality. And belief is the most powerful currency in a world where the true history has been erased. Because when history is deleted, myth becomes the only surviving weapon. And that is where this stops being a coincidence and starts becoming terrifying for the world government. Because what if the Straw Hats are not simply pirates dismantling corruption island by island, but the living reconstruction of a forbidden belief system that once rivaled the so-called gods of the present world? What if the Void Century wasn't just a political war, but a clash between two completely different worldviews, one based on hierarchy and control from above, and another based on freedom, balance, and forces like the sun, fire, death, soul, and story? And maybe the ancient kingdom wasn't only technologically advanced, but followed an entirely different vision of the world. The celestial dragons call themselves gods, not because they perform miracles, but because they sit higher than everyone else. And rulers often place themselves above everyone else to look like gods. But without real honor behind it, that power is empty. And empty gods fear the truth more than any weapon. And this brings us back to Elbath and the giants. In Norse mythology, which clearly inspired Elbath, giants aren't just villains. They are ancient forces that existed even before the gods. Sometimes they fight the gods, sometimes they are connected to them. And Ragnarok isn't just about destruction, it's about the world collapsing so something new can begin. What if the final saga of One Piece is Oda's Ragnarok? What if the current gods fall? What if the so-called demons rise? And what if the Straw Hat crew represents not darkness, but restoration of balance? Luffy, as the sun god Nika, isn't a god who wants to rule people, but one who sets them free. He is connected to laughter and freedom, and in oppressive systems, laughter is powerful, because once people stop fearing their rulers, they stop obeying them. Zoro, as the king of hell, stands for facing death without fear. Sanji's devil flames show passion and emotion. Robin, as the demon child, represents knowledge and truth. Brook, as the soul king, reminds us that death is part of life. And Usopp, as the god of stories, shows the power of belief. This is cosmological opposition. Heaven versus archetype. Control versus freedom. Fear versus myth. And if that sounds dramatic, it should, because Oda does not write about symbolism by accident, especially when he repeats a motif across multiple core characters. Now, here's where it becomes politically explosive. Throughout history, powerful systems often called their enemies devils or monsters. By using religious language, they made rebellion look evil, so people would accept their rule without questioning it. The world government labels devil fruits as cursed, but those fruits grant individuality and power outside of state control. Robin studies forbidden history and is branded a demon. Luffy liberates nations and is branded a threat to global stability. Zoro refuses to bow and is labeled dangerous. Language becomes weaponized theology, and theology becomes control. So imagine the irony if the final war in One Piece isn't just pirates against marines, but false gods against the return of an old pantheon. Imagine if the One Piece treasure is not gold, but truth so devastating it dismantles the concept of celestial divinity itself. Imagine if Imu's biggest fear isn't losing a war, but losing control of the story. Because once people believe the sun belongs to them, and not to those who sit on thrones, the entire system crumbles. Now, quick side note, and this actually fits perfectly here, because if we're talking about hidden truths and restricted access, and different regions controlling what you can or cannot see, one of the most underrated ways to expand your anime experience and stay secure online is using something like Proton VPN, which is my affiliate partner and honestly fits the theme here because it's about freedom of access and protecting yourself while exploring the internet without restrictions, especially if you're streaming anime across different regions or just want your data protected from stupid nonsense. And if that sounds interesting, the link is in the description so you can check it out and support the channel at the same time. Quick, clean, back to the lore. Because here's the real escalation. If the Straw Hats represent these forces, then who is the final piece of the puzzle? Because every pantheon needs opposition. And what is Imu? Imu rules from the shadows, unseen and hidden above the world. Maybe immortal, maybe connected to the Void Century, maybe even behind the erased history. And in many myths, a hidden ruler like this represents a force that tries to keep the world from changing. The sun god brings dawn, the shadow ruler preserves night, and dawn always threatens those who thrive in darkness. Now imagine something even more unsettling. What if devil fruits are fragments of an ancient system that gave power to the people instead of placing it in a single throne? That would mean every user carries a small divine spark, in a world where only one group claims to be gods. What if that is why they are called devil fruits? Not because they are evil, because they spread power among the people, and that alone is a rebellion. Because if everyone holds a piece of something divine, no one can claim heaven only for themselves. Which brings us back to Usopp. In many myths, the trickster is the one who reveals the truth through jokes and stories. Instead of fighting with strength, he changes how people think. And if the final war is also about changing the world's beliefs, then the god of stories could be just as important as the sun god of freedom. And here's where we push this even further. What if each Straw Hat represents a part of the world that was erased during the Void Century? Forces that once created balance instead of hierarchy. Sun, freedom and joy. Fire, transformation and will. Hell, discipline and death awareness. Soul, memory and legacy. Knowledge, truth and history. Story, belief and identity.